I can't believe what this church has come to. Bringing accordions into the chapel is totally inappropriate. I don't know. They say there's like a mission for a while, and it's like a special exception or something. I don't know. The bishop also, after coming back from Hawaii, was very lucky because he put the privilege and also the punishment of calling somebody to give the other talk and sacrament meeting on me, as if I don't have enough on my plate already. I've got to deal with the ire of my father because I asked him to speak alongside me. So I've got him, excited to get me out of the house. I did my best. I got to the shed, but I guess that wasn't enough. So my mission call happened on his birthday, which was perfect timing. The present that he got was getting me out of there. But anyway, I digress. I realize that many of you do know me. That's why there's so many unfamiliar faces to the rest of you. But many of you, now that the words have combined, may not know me. So I'll start with a little bit of a brief background. Sorry, I've got a Freudian slip there. I'm thinking about food. They say the asada in Argentina is really good, and that's all I've been thinking about. I'll start with a brief kind of introduction. Morning, everybody. My name is Kai Schwemmer, or now Elder Schwemmer. I've been called to serve in the Argentina Mendoza mission. Served again. The food is really sticking with me. And I leave for the Mexico MTC in 2 days. So Tuesday morning, I've been doing 2 weeks of home MTC, which actually hasn't been as bad as people told me it would be. And it's actually allowed me a great opportunity to spend more time with my family as well. My mom and I go and, we get lunch all the time, which is a big plus for me. They've also been my companions, and I've been able to drag them to go work out with me while I still can. Because once I'm in the field, it's going to be a little bit different. I'll be lucky if I get some sheet metal to bring around with me and pick up to do my heavy lifting. But for the last year, I've been out of school. I've been doing a lot of traveling and a lot of work. But before I was going to school at the University of Utah, I got my freshman year done. And within this last year, I've been basically doing what I had always dreamed of doing for a large part. So I've been traveling to different states, different campuses. I've had the great opportunity to be invited out to speak at different colleges, different universities around the country, and to appear on different podcasts and shows, which has been a great time. Politics and, public speaking has always been a big interest of mine. So being able to pursue that now, especially, has been very exciting. And it's something that, I'd always dreamed of doing when I was a little bit younger, and now I've actually been able to do. And it's been probably the coolest thing. I am totally vindicated on taking my leave of absence early from school. It totally paid off, much to my mom's chagrin, but I've got my resume built out now. In my free time, I make videos, I do podcasts, I stream online. Most of it is political, but within my political circles, there's a large overlap of religious fervor. And within these circles, most of the people are Catholic or Orthodox, and then there's some Protestants thrown in there as well, which makes me, being LDS, a bit of a black sheep in the audience. And that became very apparent. I've never been apologetic about my faith, and I've never tried to hide it. Obviously, I talk a lot. Those who know me know that. So it's very difficult for me to keep my tongue tied about that very integral part of my character. So within these circles, being a bit of a black sheep has always, brought out some questions. And, the questions, how can you call yourself a Christian if you're Mormon? Mormons aren't Christian. Or, the one I get, these people are very, it's like a dialogue that they've written out, or a script. Because it always seems to be the same things. Mormonism is a Freemasonic cult founded by a con man, or Mormonism is heretical. Read the CES letter. And most of those people who say that haven't read the CES letter, which I find really funny. But it was these questions that early on actually did provoke a little bit of doubt and a little falter in my testimony. And so as I was starting out, getting more public with my persona and my content online, and being more unapologetic about my faith. It was these questions that started to kind of sow these seeds of doubt, and they would fester, and over time they kind of grew and grew, and eventually it came to this boiling point, because I'd never encountered these questions before. I was comfortable in my faith, but I never really had this onslaught of so many people telling me that what I believe is incorrect. So these questions just built up over time, and eventually I came to this catalyst, this critical point, where I realized that rather than let my testimony die out, a testimony that I was so sure of prior, rather than continue to see this happen, I ought to do exactly what the scriptures and the prophet and the apostles and all my teaching in seminary and even in primary school told me I ought to do when I'm confronted with difficult questions. And that is to ask with a sincere heart, to ask God to pose a question the way that Joseph Smith did at the beginning of the Restoration, and to actually do some research in defense of my faith. And that may sound kind of obvious to say, that you should probably look into the rebuttals instead of just letting these questions build up and brew this doubt inside of you. But to me, that was something that I took a while to get around to. But when I did get around to actually looking into the rebuttals, looking into these questions, when I consulted general conference talks and the scriptures and gospel topics essays and some apologetics, I realized that most of these questions, if not all, had pretty easy answers. These things like the CES letter that once created this idea of doubt in my mind, I found had pretty easy answers, and were certainly not the great opponents and the final nail in the coffin of my testimony. They were a way of reassuring my faith and building up that testimony. It was these questions and doing my own research, finding answers to these difficult questions, some less difficult than others. That's how can you call yourself a Christian if you're Mormon? Or Mormonism is a Freemasonic cult founded by a con man. Yeah, these are usually a little bit less in depth, but some of the more serious theological questions became the basis for a greater faith. It was my doubts and concerns and questions that led, after research and my due diligence, to an increase in faith and testimony. So brothers and sisters, I testify that when we come across questions or facts that may challenge our faith and our testimony, the adversary will make it so easy to curl up and let those doubts, build inside of you. But it's precisely at that moment that we ought to feel more inspired than ever to do what the Lord calls us to do, and do what Joseph Smith did, to take our questions to the Lord. And I have a testimony that if we do this, we will receive answers. Within this kind of community that I found myself in, this political one, after I had done more of this apologetics research, I saw a great increase in my faith, but also my knowledge of the church. I went from, understanding the ideas of, the early church and Joseph Smith and some of his life, to now I look into, what do early church fathers and Orthodox saints believe about the idea of theosis, and how does that similar to the idea of exaltation, and, what is creatio ex nihilo, and all these Greek terms and all this mumbo jumbo that I never thought I'd be getting into. But all of this kind of intellectual pursuit of these answers truly served as the basis for strengthening that testimony that had once started to falter. And after all that research, I've had the core tenets of my testimony constantly reaffirmed, which is Jesus Christ is the Son of God who atoned for the sins of all mankind. God has provided a plan of salvation for us to return to him and live in eternity with our eternal families, and that the Bible and the Book of Mormon are true, and they are the Word of God. I've had that testimony reinforced and encouraged through all of these questions. So in these circles, I became well known for being an unapologetic Latter-day Saint, doing apologetics for the church. And when I spoke about my faith, I found myself feeling very good after doing it. Certain times before I do even a political show, I'd say a prayer that I'd be able to perform well, and that the words would come to my mind. And I always found that this provided me with the best product, that I was able to speak the best, and that I felt the best after deliberating with God. And so within the last 6 months, my content turned from more political to even more overtly religious. I was having debates with Catholics about the differences in our faith or the similarities. I was talking about my testimony and about experiences in church all the time. And that was when I began receiving messages over Instagram or even emails, which I never thought I would get, of people who had been watching this content of mine, seeing the more overt, bearing of my testimony, and then being humble enough and generous enough to share with me their thoughts. I'd like to read out just a few of these messages I received. This story is amazing. So I got a message from somebody who I'd been interacting with in politics for a little while, and he says, "Hey, Kai, just wanted to say thank you for being my introduction to Christ's true church. I've been meeting with the missionaries out here in Atlanta and have been attending an LDS church for over a month now and praying on the Book of Mormon. I know it is the truth, and I plan to be baptized before the end of the year. Best of luck on your mission. I know that wherever you are called, you will change lives. Blessings from me and the missionaries here in Atlanta. P.S. Sister Condi out here says she was a debate partner of yours in high school. Small world." And Sister Condi was a debate partner of mine in high school. She was a very talented gal. And that to me was crazy. But I'm like, wow, that's the Utah community. But then after chatting a little bit more, there was an event held in, I'm trying to remember where, it was Nashville, and it was a religious panel discussion. It was a Protestant, an Orthodox, and a Catholic. And they were all basically discussing differences in the faith and where their similarities lie. And in the audience, there were two Latter-day Saints. It was me and this guy who I now had an opportunity to meet. So we shook hands, we spent some time together, and we took a photo, and I posted this onto my Instagram story. And little do you know, I had somebody else message me, somebody who used to be in our ward, is currently in Atlanta, I believe. We had Daniel Elliott, the son of the Elliots in our ward, message me and say, "Hey, I think that guy's in my ward." And to me, this was like, this is the smallest world ever. This is crazy. So I told him about how he was somebody I'd interacted with politically, and he sent me another message. The investigator said, "Hey, Kai, I've scheduled my baptism for this Friday, and I'll be baptized by the missionaries that I first spoke to almost 2 months ago. I'd love to have you attend it virtually via Zoom if that interests you. Without you, I wouldn't have been set on the path to Christ's true church, and it would mean the world to have you see me step into this next chapter with Christ." So it was just a fantastic message, and something that I never thought I'd be receiving. I do a political podcast. I goof around. I say wacky things. And yet here is somebody who felt compelled enough to tell me how I had strengthened their testimony. The message I'll read out from Daniel is pretty funny. I'm reading it verbatim. "Yo, hold up. No way. 99% sure homie in the middle just got baptized into my ward a few weeks ago and goes to GT. Are you in Atlanta?" So that was the message I got. And that was my, holy crap, it's a small world. Which is funny for those of you who know Daniel. He's one of the most intelligent and academic people I know, and I think he tries to subvert people's expectations by, using some of the slang. But he can't hide it. He is an incredibly intelligent guy. So that was one story, and even the story of this person's baptism is incredible. He was on a campus that he did not attend, where the missionaries happened to be walking, and they were sister missionaries who were not actually in his area. And so he met those missionaries. They referred him to the missionaries in his area, and the rest is history. I got another message from another individual. It says, "If you could send a prayer my way on December 22nd around 6 p.m., that's when I'll be getting baptized and converting. The laying on of hands will be on Christmas, God willing." So I reply, of course, this is super exciting. And that, comes out of the blue. Somebody telling me they're getting baptized. This is fantastic news. And this is probably my favorite. There's a message I got the other day, and it said, "Hi, Kai. We have never interacted. I have never even so much as commented on one of your videos to my memory. But I just want to thank you for the huge positive impact you had on my life." Skipping through a little bit, he says, in this process, I saw you talking about the LDS Church, and you seem much more enthusiastic about it than most other people who think like us talk about their churches. Everything, he said, and it just clicked. Everything just makes so much more sense in this church than anywhere else. I've been talking to missionaries for a month or so now, and I'm getting baptized in a few weeks. Of course, there are many things that led me here. First and foremost, the Father himself, but I just want to thank you for the not insignificant part you played in making sure you know the work you're doing is worthwhile. Politics is stupid, but you're saving souls, brother. God bless you. And to that, I say amen. But it was this opportunity I had to be a missionary in my own life and in my own hobbies that made me realize that, maybe I'd be good at doing it out in the field. And that required a bit of sacrifice. For somebody who kind of has to build a career off of being recognizable, going to Argentina for 2 years is probably not the best idea if we're speaking in worldly terms. But I overcame many of the obstacles that were stopping me from serving a mission. And God had an interesting plan for me there. I had lifelong friends of about 11 years who I was very close to. And one of the big things that stopped me from serving a mission when I was 18 was that I had this big fear of missing out. But we fell apart over political differences, and that was a very tough thing to go through. But it alleviated this burden that I had been feeling about the fear of missing out. Another thing I was worried about missing out, and it may sound trivial to many of you, some people will understand what I'm saying. I've been working out consistently for almost every day, plus the rest day in the week, for about 3 years now. And it becomes such a big part of my routine. It was incredibly difficult to let that go. But, there was a day driving back from the gym where I just felt overcome with this sense of relief that would be something that I could take up after the mission and maybe even get some newbie gains out of, which is something where if you don't train your muscles for a while, they see a larger increase in hypertrophy. So I had many steps and many things that stopped me from wanting to serve a mission. But eventually, after standing as a witness to God at all times and in all places, I realized that my effect was on so many people, even those who I may never have known existed, like that last individual who had never even left a comment or interacted with me in any way. And it was this feeling that bolstered my faith so much, and that ignited this fire in my bosom, and that ultimately inspired me to serve a mission. And so I'd bear my testimony that when we stand as a witness of God at all times, in all things, in all places, we can have such a positive effect on so many people who we may not even know exist. And we will make our testimony felt by them and can have such a great effect in their lives if we only are willing to submit ourselves to God and to spend some time reaching out and being unapologetic in our faith and never backing down from those who may have disagreements when we bear our testimony. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.